Are we living in an age of revolution? I mean, it's a huge question, right? It might not always feel like it, but one particular political analysis argues that, yeah, we are. And it says most of us are just using the wrong definitions. So let's dive in and break down this argument.
I mean, just think about it. From the streets of Nepal to the squares of Peru, from France to Syria, the 21st century has been absolutely rocked by massive popular uprisings. We've all seen the images, we've read the headlines. It's a truly global thing. But what do we actually call these events?
And that's the million-dollar question. Are these just riots? Are they rebellions? Or are they full-blown revolutions? Well, the analysis we're exploring today points out that something like 99% of the global left says, no, they're not revolutions. They argue that something absolutely crucial is missing.
Okay, so let's explore that dominant viewpoint first. The author calls this the subjectivist argument, and it really all hinges on one specific missing ingredient.
And that missing ingredient? It's what's known as the subjective factor. The whole idea is that for an uprising to be a real revolution, it has to be consciously led by an organized revolutionary party, with a plan. From this point of view, if there's no party at the helm, it doesn't matter if a dictator falls or a government gets completely overthrown. It just doesn't count.
Now, the author traces this idea way back to its philosophical roots. This focus on conscious leadership, on the idea of revolution, is linked back to the philosopher Hegel. His idealist view was that history is really driven by ideas, and this is set against Marx's materialism, which argues that history is driven by concrete, objective stuff. Economic conditions, class struggle, not just the ideas bouncing around in people's heads.
And the author we're looking at, well, they don't mince words. They argue that focusing only on this subjective factor is actually a huge step backwards. It's moving away from a materialist analysis of the world, and as they put it, it's like returning to the Hegelian kindergarten of the 19th century. Pretty blunt. Okay, so if that's the argument against calling these events revolutions, what's the counter? Let's get into the materialist rebuttal, which is really the heart of this entire analysis. The author builds their case with this really powerful quote from Leon Trotsky, and the point is pretty clear. People in power will always try to downplay a revolution by calling it something else, a riot, a mob, whatever. But changing the label doesn't change the reality of what's happening on the ground.
So here's the crucial point. From a materialist perspective, a revolution is an objective process. It happens because of deep problems in a society: economic hardship, oppression, class conflict. It basically erupts from the ground up, whether or not there's a political party there on day one ready to lead it.
But that kind of creates a puzzle, doesn't it? If revolutions are just objective, are leaders and parties totally unimportant? Well, not exactly. The author points to a theorist named Nahuel Moreno, who offered a pretty brilliant way to think about this. He saw revolution not as one single event, but as a process that could have two different stages.
And this really breaks down the two types. So first you have what he calls a February Revolution. This is that spontaneous, leaderless uprising we talked about, the one that erupts objectively from social conditions. The masses are making a revolution, but maybe in an unconscious way, without a totally clear, unified plan. Now that's contrasted with an October Revolution, which is a conscious revolution. That's one where that subjective factor, a revolutionary party, is there to actually lead and direct the whole process.
So you see, it's a process. It starts with step one. Boom, the February Revolution happens. This kicks off step two, an interregnum, this messy in-between period of instability and what's called dual power, where the old rulers are weak but haven't been fully replaced. Now this period could last for months or even years. And it's during that time that conditions might finally mature for step three, the potential for an October Revolution, where a conscious leadership can actually take the reins.
But what if that leadership, that subjective factor, never actually comes together? What happens then? Well, according to Moreno's theory, you get stuck. You end up with recurrent Februaries. The same objective problems cause uprisings to happen again and again, but they never quite get over the finish line. They fail to achieve that decisive transformation.
So let's take this idea, this framework, and use it as a lens to look at our modern world. How does this actually apply to the things we're seeing today? Well, according to this author, many of the huge uprisings of our century in Nepal, Palestine, Rojava, Ecuador, Bangladesh, and lots of others are classic February revolutions. They are genuine, objective revolutions, even if they don't have a single unified revolutionary party leading them. They are the first explosive step in a much longer potential process.
And that's really the big takeaway here. Refusing to call these events revolutions is, from this perspective, a huge mistake. By recognizing them as February revolutions, we can see them for what they are, the real, messy, powerful start of a revolutionary process. And that's the essential first step to properly analyzing their strengths, their weaknesses, and their potential to become something more.
And all of this leaves us with a really critical question for the future, doesn't it? If the world really is full of these February revolutions, these spontaneous, objective first steps, what does it take to get to the second? What will define the Octobers of the 21st century? That's definitely something to think about.